Grassy Posse Packer Nation, welcome to another episode of Packcast, the podcast where you don't have to be a Packers fan, but it sure does help. I'm your host, Tom Grassi. I know it's been a couple weeks, been a little radio quiet, had some work things going on, had to prepare for the AP, was working some 10-hour days, and things have been relatively quiet on the NFL front, as we're kind of entering that dead spot before training camp and all that great stuff. But yesterday, news came out about the national anthem policy being passed. And I didn't feel great about it yesterday, and I didn't post a video. And I still didn't feel great about it today. And this video might lose me some subscribers, and that's totally fine, because I'm not going to pretend to be somebody for the camera that I'm not. So with that being said, I feel like this is something that needs to be talked about. And me being a random Packers fan in New York, I have all the qualifications of everyone else talking about it. Whether it be journalists, ESPN analysts, or random bloggers. And I kind of just wanted to give my 2 cents and potentially start a conversation since, I think the community that we built here is pretty awesome, and I think we can have these kinds of conversations. And this has come up in videos before, but this policy really doesn't make me feel happy, doesn't really make me feel proud to support the NFL, to really be a fan of the NFL. And just in case you haven't heard about the new policy, is that if you are on the field as an NFL player, you have to stand for the national anthem. You can choose to remain in the locker room. If you protest on the field, the NFL will fine your team as a whole. And in addition, teams can also implement their own disciplinary policies as well. And when this first started with Colin Kaepernick a couple years ago, this was something that brought attention to an issue that needed to be addressed, that still needs to be addressed. It was never about disrespect for the country. It was never about disrespect for the military. And unfortunately, that's the way the conversation was warped. And I think the thing that amazes me the most is that Roger Goodell came out with a statement yesterday saying that, unfortunately, on-field protests created a false perception amongst many that thousands of NFL players were unpatriotic. This is not and was never the case. And so if you're the commissioner of the NFL and you're admitting that this has nothing to do with patriotism or lack thereof, then why are you not allowing your players to protest peacefully and utilize their free speech or utilize the platform that they've been given to spread awareness about a very serious, rampant, ongoing, life-threatening issue? And there's a couple of camps that I want to talk about and why this is really bothering me. It bothers me that Colin Kaepernick doesn't have a job. And listen, on this show 2 years ago, I was bashing Colin Kaepernick. Had nothing to do with him taking a knee. But as a player, he had really regressed. But there's no way that you can confidently say that he is not better than at least half of the backups and some of even the starting quarterbacks that are in the NFL today. But you guys like Eric Reed, who is a 26-year-old safety who's had a great, very short career, still doesn't have a job for his on-the-field protests. There's also the camps that say that the NFL has declined in viewership because of the protests last year. Just to give you some statistics on that, 37 out of the 50 top televised broadcasts were NFL games last season. The NFL did decline by 9%, which is exactly the amount that the primetime viewership declined, 9%. And that has to do with cord cutting, Netflix, Hulu, streaming, what have you. So they went down the exact same number that all primetime TV went down. And so I'm going to call BS on that one and say that I don't think that that's really the case. But Goodell came out yesterday saying that all owners unanimously voted yes. Reports came out today that they didn't even hold an official vote. They were just polled instead. And Jed York was the guy who abstained from it. The Raiders also abstained from the vote as well. And so before I get to like the final point here, the president is also responsible for a lot of this kind of spotlight that's been shown on the NFL from his tweets last season. He came out on Fox and Friends saying that I think that this is good. I don't think people should be staying in locker rooms, but still I think it's good. You have to stand proudly for the national anthem or you shouldn't be playing. You shouldn't be there. Maybe you shouldn't be in the country. And so if you are on the issue or at the side of the issue in which you don't want these players to peacefully protest in front of you and you would rather them hide in the locker room so you don't have to see it on your TV, I would hope that you're also standing at home, or anytime you go to the game, you're not buying something or drinking a beer or anything like that, and you're showing the same respect that you're forcing these athletes to pay. Because I think that if you're saying that this is a patriotism issue, which it's, quite frankly, it's not. This has always been about social inequality, about police shootings of black unarmed teens. It's always been about that. But it's easier to say that no, that these highly paid athletes are instead spoiled, that they're egotistical, that they're unpatriotic, they don't care about the country, they don't care about the military, because it's easier to write them off that way than instead of actually addressing the problem at hand, which is why they're kneeling in the first place. I think the problem I have with this is that not only is the commissioner of the NFL saying this, but the president of the United States is also saying that I don't want to see you protest. I would rather you do it in a locker room somewhere off camera, somewhere where I don't have to see that. Because somewhere along the way, it has now become anytime you insult something that's going on within this country or the president, that now you're unpatriotic. And that's funny because 2 years ago when we had a different president, we could launch bombs all the time, right? We can make fun of, the president, we could go after whatever. But now that's changed, and this pseudo fake hyper nationalism BS is dangerous. And to say that these players should just stick to playing football, well, if that's not dehumanizing, I don't know what is. Because these are people. We will pay them a ton of money to watch them do incredible things and entertain us on the football field, but they're people. And we don't mind when guys like J.J. Watt pay for school shooting victims, which is amazing, their funerals, or pay, hurricane relief, raise millions of dollars for hurricane relief, and that's all phenomenal. But once they say something we don't like, that's when it's not okay. The only free speech that really matters is when it's agreeing with your viewpoint or your perspective. And I am not a vet. This is not something that personally offends me. I know people who are offended by it. I know vets who are not offended by it. But I'm also not someone who is more likely to be targeted by police or shot by police. And I think that if you're saying that your protest either doesn't matter or shouldn't be seen or shouldn't be talked about, that's more of a crime than someone kneeling for the national anthem, which Kaepernick was told to do by a military member, because that was more respectful than sitting down. But we tend to forget that too. And so, if you're offended by this, and you are now upset that I have brought it up, I appreciate the support that you've given me over the past 3 years. I really do. Thank you for watching. But if you need to leave after this, I completely understand. But this is something that I really don't feel good about. I think as a democracy, something that this entire country is supposed to be built about, we are supposed to be able to point out its flaws and talk about them. But now you're telling people, no, Let's not talk about that. I don't even want to see you. And if I do, then we're going to charge you money. That feels really dirty to me. And it's something that I am really not happy with. I'm always going to be a Packers fan. I'm always going to love this team. I'm going to do this show. But this is a day that I'm not really happy to be an NFL fan. So instead of, I think, policing what other people are saying about the country or silently protesting about the country and saying that they're unpatriotic or they're against the military, why don't we actually do something so that they don't have to protest? Why don't we do something that will eliminate the need for anybody to get upset about kneeling for the national anthem? Let's solve those actual problems instead of making up some BS problems that you are super offended that a black guy is kneeling during the national anthem, because that is not a real problem. A real problem are people being shot. A real problem is the racism that really exists in this country. Let's focus on that. I'm very curious to see what you think. So let me know in the comments down below. I'm sure this will be I'm hoping it will be a civil conversation. But I had to get that out. So thanks for watching. I appreciate that. I'll be back soon. I'm Tom Grassi. And as always, go Pack Go.